We'd like to thank our sponsor today, Gas Station Fountain Drinks. We're working on an endorsement deal with Gas Station Hot Dogs. We'll see how that goes. I'll let you know how that pans out. Hey, welcome. It's the daily update here at the Classic Guitar Rock podcast page thing, coming to you from the Northern Command Center. We're getting snow. The good news is it's warmer, but that means we're getting lots of snow. So it's a sad thing when you look forward to snow, because that means it's going to be warmer than it's been. So we're getting a deluge of snow, and that's exciting. But I'm warm down here in the command center. Thank you for joining. One little programming note that I'm going to start doing. You can come in live during this broadcast program. You can come in live and make comments, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or X, formerly known as Twitter. I love to get your comments. What I'm going to do is, if you have a comment, question, insult, anything at all, you can post this throughout this 15, 20 minutes that we'll spend together. And then at the very end, I'll go through all those comments. I think that would be fun. So if you're watching right now and you want to make a comment, say hi or whatever, at the end, we'll come back and we will share any and all of those if we get those. Some days I'll get 3 or 4. Some days I don't get any. But please, by all means, chime in, and then we'll share that at the end. So I am not rehearsed. I don't know what I have an idea of what we're going to talk about, but I'm not prepared. So let's see how it goes. We got Motley Crue in the news. I know that. So there's nothing less rock and roll than talking about legal documents from your favorite classic rock bands. Well, we've got more of this. Okay. Remember, not an amicable split when Mick Mars left the Crue. He claims he was terminated, and they said that he retired. Well, it come to find out they kicked him out. Okay, they kicked him out, and most people have sided with Mick in all this. So this is from Ultimate Classic Rock. I don't know where they got it from, but I'm getting this from Ultimate Classic Rock. Quote, Motley Crue, not a quote, never mind. Motley Crue has lost the legal battle in the ongoing dispute with their former guitarist, Mick Mars. The two sides have been battling since April, when Mars claimed the group was trying to rip him off financially following his retirement from the group. Now, a Los Angeles judge has ruled that the band refused to turn over documents to Mars in a timely manner, despite the guitarist and his representatives' continued requests. Quote, the requests were not burdensome, yet Mars was compelled to file suit, and it appears plain that production would not have occurred without it. Mars is entitled to attorney fees. This, according to Los Angeles Superior Court Judge James C. Chalfant. The judge further noted that the band claimed to have given Mars, quote, all of the responsive documents, end quote, he requested in November, only to turn around and give the guitarist an additional 1,372 pages of records in early December. So clearly they hadn't given him everything. Inconceivable. These documents should have been produced without the need for prodding by Mars, Judge Chalfant wrote. The failure to produce the documents earlier than December 8th amounts to a refusal. Despite the decision, the dispute between Motley Crue and Mars continues. The crux of the battle, Mars claims that he was illegally severed from the band. It's scheduled to be heard by a private arbitrator later this year. Meanwhile, now this is funny, lawyers for both sides claimed victory following the ruling. That's why politicians are usually lawyers. Okay? Both sides are claiming victory. How do you know? How does a politician sleep, or a lawyer? Well, they lie on one side, and then they lie on the other side, and then they lie. Okay. Both sides are claiming victory. Finally, somebody somewhere told these guys they can't bully Mick anymore. We're in the middle of a huge arbitration that will ultimately decide if Mick has to give up his shares or not, if they did things properly or not. Obviously, we claim they didn't do anything properly, but they feel they're above the rules, and that's what this lawsuit was about, end quote. That's from Mick's lawyer. This was them feeling they were above the rules, and this judge saying, no, you're not. And you may have given all the documents now, so there's nothing left for me to do, but you're going to pay for it, he continued. I think that's a pretty huge victory for Mick. If they want to claim victory, that's fine. But this is someone finally telling Mick, no, you're not crazy. These guys are bullying you, and we're not going to let it happen. So Motley Crue's side says the case is over. That's the key takeaway. By denying the petition as moot and ending the case, the court found that the band turned over all the documents to Mars and there's nothing more to do. The band went above and beyond its obligations by providing much more documents than the statute required. Indeed, the court's decision explained the thousands of documents that the band provided to Mars. So, they join the ranks of bands like Journey and Queensryche and Rat that spend way more time in courtrooms than on stages. Sad. In more Motley Crue news, and this is kind of becoming a thing, right? Motley Crue will celebrate their 43rd birthday by unveiling the Cruseum, an online virtual museum dedicated to the band's long and colorful history. In fact, on our X page, our news, our on this day in music item is that on this date in 1981, Motley Crue officially formed. That was before Mick was in the band and before Vince Neil was in the band. They had two other schmucks, but it was on this date that they first got together. Nicky and Tommy got together with a different singer, different guitar player. The Cruseum gives fans an expansive look at all facets of Motley Crue's career. The site includes rare memorabilia, backstage photos, handwritten notes, flyers, yada, yada, yada. So does it cost money? I don't know if it costs money. Remember, we talked yesterday about Vinnie Vincent. Vinnie Vincent has a... You got to laugh or you'll cry. Vinnie Vincent has a Facebook group that at the beginning of the year, he told folks that he'll begin charging them $200 a year to belong to his Facebook group. So it doesn't say anything about if there's a charge for the Cruseum or not. We'll see. But this is kind of the latest thing, right? We're in a brave new world. The landscape has changed. And so it only makes sense that artists will interact in an online format. We've talked about Kiss's stupid avatars, right? So they're moving into this cyber sphere, computer jazzy stuff. And why wouldn't Motley Crue? Neil Young has a virtual museum, Metallica, Radiohead, Grateful Dead, Johnny Cash. So Motley Crue's just jumping on that bandwagon as well. And if it's free, that's wonderful. I guess if someone's willing to pay to go to a virtual Cruseum, well, that's great. I ain't going to pay $200 to be in Vinnie Vincent's little club. That ain't a club. I don't think I'd go to that one for free, to be honest. I'm just saying. We got some news from former band members kind of going out on their own since leaving said bands. Dennis Stratton. This is from Blabbermouth is where I'm getting this. The article reads, few have gotten more out of a year in a band than Dennis Stratton. So Dennis Stratton played in Iron Maiden in 79 and 80. He played on the first Maiden album, but then was replaced by Adrian Smith before Killers, before the second album. But Dennis Stratton has, kind of played the circuit in Maiden tribute bands and at Iron Maiden conventions and new wave of British heavy metal things. So along with, he and Paul Di'Anno are kind of they're just trying to make a little money. Okay. Cut them some slack, but they're always kind of, hey, we're the poster children for the early days of Maiden. And there's a small but vocal group that prefers the Paul Di'Anno era. I like the Paul Di'Anno era, but Bruce is way better, and Maiden was way better once Bruce joined. But again, there's those that prefer the Paul Di'Anno era. But anyways, my whole point is Dennis Stratton is now part of this outfit called Lionheart. And it's actually pretty good. It's album oriented rock. It's melodic hard rock. It's not as heavy as Maiden, but not bad. You might want to check it out. Lionheart. He was also in Praying Mantis, which was kind of a minor C-level new wave of British heavy metal band. They never got any traction. He was a part of that band for a long time, 1990 to 2006. But this is just by way of introducing you to Lionheart. You might want to check it out. Stratton, obviously part of the early days of Iron Maiden, so that's always kind of interesting to check out. Not sure why he left. It seems like I watched a documentary about it. Dave was in there from the beginning. I think Dennis left on his own, if I'm remembering. I don't remember, but he's kind of built a career, being the former guitarist from Iron Maiden, and good for him. And Lionheart's not bad. You might want to check it out. You can stream it. Speaking of former band members, Ross Valory, regarded as one of rock's best bass guitarists. Is he? I don't know. I never hear his name come up in the list of best guitarists. He's obviously a good bass guitarist. He's an original member of the multi-platinum band Journey until his 2020 departure. Translation, fired. He was fired. Again, there were legal wranglings around that. Well, he's got a solo album out, and it debuts today. Well, at least the video debuts today. The video for Tomland, the hypnotic first single from the bassist and songwriter's debut album, All of the Above. So All of the Above, the album, it says right here. It won't come out until April, but they're releasing the first single today called Tomland. It's an instrumental. I'll be interested to hear that. Pinned by Valory, the all-instrumental Tomland marks the second piece recorded for the project and the first done entirely at his new studio in the East Bay area of Northern California. The track builds to a ripping climactic solo by red-hot guitarist Miles Shawn. Any relation to Neil Shawn? Interesting. Drummer Prairie Prince. Prairie Prince played, I think it was in the Tubes. He was in one of the incarnations of the Cars when they came back. Remember that? The new Cars? They made an album with Todd Rundgren. Instead of Rick Ocasek, they brought Todd Rundgren in, and I think Prairie Prince was the drummer in that project. Interesting. That was around 2002, 2003. Keyboardist Eric Levy is involved. Valory had the basic parts kicking around since shortly after leaving the Steve Miller Band in 1972. A bluesy set of chords that roll into each other mellifluously, something he had jammed on a lot over the years. He pulled it out to fashion a piece that not only recalls the passing of collaborator Tom Size, he's the engineer that worked on it and also worked with Mr. Big, Y&T, and Aerosmith, but also offers an affirmation of resolve to move forward, the sunlight of optimism illuminating the process. That's quite an instrumental that can do all of that. So you'll want to check that out. That is Ross Valory's. The song is called Tomland from the upcoming album. I just saw it. All of the Above. So you'll want to check that out. On this date, way back in 2011, Don Kirshner died. Now, Don Kirshner was a publisher, talent manager. I think he was a songwriter. He launched the careers of Neil Diamond, Bobby Darin, Carole King, Neil Sedaka, the Monkees. So mostly like pop stuff. However, one of his big finds was a little group. Well, I say little, but they were so big that a whole state was named after them, right? Kansas. Kansas was discovered. He didn't discover them. Someone sent him a tape. But anyways, he heard about this long-haired band called Kansas. And he was the dude that pumped some money into him, believed in him. You know, it took a few albums, right? But eventually it paid off because Kirshner came from a time where they actually developed artists, right? It wasn't like it is today. Hey, if your first single isn't platinum, or if your first album isn't multi-platinum, then we're dumping you. It wasn't like that. They would let bands develop over time. So a big deal. Now, just yesterday, I wasn't aware of this documentary, but I watched it yesterday and I thought it was a new documentary, except the violinist, Rob, what's his name? Can't remember the violinist in Kansas. He died about a year ago and he's in this documentary. So I thought, well, maybe it just came out and they're using older footage. Well, come to find out, this documentary's been around since 2015. You should watch it on YouTube right now. It's called Kansas: Miracles Out of Nowhere. And it kind of goes through the whole history of them hooking up with Don Kirshner. It's the early days, right? So it doesn't get clear up into when Steve Walsh left or any of that, but just a fascinating documentary. And it just happened to coincide with the anniversary of the passing of Don Kirshner. But I would highly recommend that you check out that documentary, Kansas: Miracles Out of Nowhere. You can watch it on YouTube. I watched the whole thing yesterday and it's fascinating. Kansas is I don't want to say they're underrated because I think they were very successful. Maybe they are underrated, overlooked, right? They're a super talented band and no one else really sounded like Kansas. Not many bands wore overalls or tuxedos, so they were kind of fashion plates as well. But you got to check out that documentary. It talks a lot about Don Kirshner, who of course passed away on this date way back in 2011. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you watching the updates. Appreciate you listening to the podcast. We owe you another episode of the podcast. Sorry, things have been super busy, but we will get a new episode up. In the meantime, thank you for joining us here on the Daily Update. You can email me, classicguitarrock@mail.com. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Live long and prosper.